Good evening and welcome to NUFC Matters. My name's Steve Wraith.
And I'm Malcolm MacDonald, looking forward to getting some writing on my shirt this week.
And I'm John Gibson.
Hi lads, welcome along again to the studio, and great to see you. And a 1-1 draw against Watford. I don't like to boast.
But you forecast that score there.
But I did forecast it. And I didn't put a bet on. You can guarantee if I don't put a bet on, it's going to happen.
Yeah.
But look, 1-1 draw. Interesting start to the season. But let's talk about that game first of all. Mal, what was your thoughts on the game against Watford?
In all honesty, I thought Newcastle were quite rag-baggish and disorganised, to say the least. That I understood them playing five at the back down at Spurs, and it all worked so well for them. But to play five at the back with the fullbacks just not getting forward, you really it should have been a 3-4-3, and it wasn't.
Right.
It was. It was a 5-2-3. The midfield was so overworked because they had no real width coming from the fullback positions, and we've got a forward line of three, and they never had a shot on target. All three of them in the whole game, and that really isn't good enough. And I didn't have that feeling that after the equaliser had gone in, I never got the feeling that Newcastle were in for another goal at all. And I found the whole thing very disappointing. Very disappointing.
Yeah, basically that. It was a huge opportunity lost, in my opinion, Steve.
Yeah.
As we'd lost a huge opportunity at Norwich, this ought to have been back-to-back Premier League wins, which would have made the outlook look so different. Let's be truthful, this was two poor sides. Watford were a poor side, and yet you could say deserved their draw.
They did, John. Sorry to interrupt, but they played in a very similar fashion positionally to Newcastle, but they looked a much better side in the way that they knocked it around at the back and in the middle. They were much better organised, and I thought, good heavens above, this is the side bottom of the table.
I mean, certainly,
Newcastle have got problems.
In the first half, I was absolutely shocked by everything we'd done well at Spurs, being defensively organised, no space, no room. We defended horribly at the back. Shaw excluded, who I thought did well, and thank goodness going forward as well, but I thought he did well. But we couldn't pass the ball. We passed to the opposition, into no man's land, time and time again. And whatever's said about up front, and Joe Linton can look a good player in as much as he looks elegant. You've got Almiron, who will run all day and is quick, but we have no penetration.
Yeah.
We don't look as if we're going to score a bag full of goals. And these two guys, I mean, Almiron hasn't scored in 14, 15 games now. And Joe Linton.
He hasn't had a shot at goal.
No, but he hasn't had an assist, which is the other thing he's supposed to be good at.
I saw on social media somebody pointed out that it was a similar situation for Perez when he first came to the club. I remember he was signed obviously as a development player. He got thrown in at the deep end. He was quick. He was running around into blind spaces, but wasn't scoring a great deal of goals. But by the end, he was averaging it.
He was
Perez cost $1.5 million. This fella cost 21 million. He doesn't have the time that Perez or anybody else had.
Fair point.
He's the second costliest player in Newcastle's history.
Sure.
And he should be producing. I don't want to be too harsh on it. I can see potential in both of them, both Almiron and Joe Linton.
Yeah.
But at 21 million and 40 million, we oughtn't to be talking about potential. We're looking for a bit more of an end product, and I'm just concerned because I don't see the first growth of an end product in terms of goals for the two boys at the moment.
With Almiron, if I'm going to be critical, what I would have to say in the very first place is he's too nice, and you cannot go and do serious damage to an opposing defence if you're a nice guy.
Yeah,
you have to be nasty. And Almiron, he looks to me as if he just wants to please everybody. He wants to please the whole world.
Yeah.
And when you're playing football, life doesn't work like that. And I would like him to get on with the ball and be absolutely greedy. I want to see him use his pace, take one or two players on, get beyond them, and start rattling shots in.
Yeah.
But he doesn't. It's almost as if he wants to say, "Oh, I'm going to bring you into the game because I like you, and I'm smiling at you all the time," and you know, and it's all so false.
Now we know why you had so much success, because you're a nasty son, so so now it's dawned on me after all this time.
But you look at players like myself and Alan Shearer and so on and so forth, that there is a nasty streak, and I'm looking for it from Almiron. And if you haven't got that nasty streak, you're never going to score goals. I haven't seen him get into a ruck or a row or a physical confrontation with any opposing player. He's too nice.
Draw a fair result, would you say?
Probably a bad result from our point of view.
Going down 1-0 so early, I think probably people were fearing the worst. And last season we got a Tonkin at home against Watford.
I understand what you're saying, but going down too early, it left 88 minutes to get back into the game and go and win it. And I felt that once Newcastle got back into the game, that was it. It was almost as if they were happy to have gone away with that one.
If we want to look on the positive side, and we do because we're 3 Newcastle United fans, if we want to look on the positive side, for me, there was 3 positive things come out the game, and there were Atsu, Shaw and Willems, the lad that played on the left side behind Atsu. I've been quite pleasantly surprised at Spurs in this game with Atsu, who I have had great suspicion about until now. And against all the odds, when he had no pre-season, etc., because of the African Cup of Nations and an injury, he's come out in those games and produced some sort of end product. Shaw, we know, has got quality and has proved it time and time again at Newcastle. And the new lad, Willems, first start, we were wondering what we might get from him. And he'd had an iffy start before that. His goal, the goal that beat us with Arsenal, was down to him. We talked about whether he was off the high dive board when we equalised against Leicester in the League Cup, and it was a magnificent dive from the high dive board with Pike. No question about that. But he played well. The boy played well on Saturday, and yes, you could say it was easy. If you played half decent, you would stand out in that particular game, but he did. And no doubt we'll have a look at the whole season so far later. But I came away with a disappointment because, like you, I suspected. I mean, I said when we were doing the forecast, I said 4-1, 1-1, but my heart's going to go 2-1. I just suspected that Newcastle United, being Newcastle, after Spurs, weren't going to come along and rip aside to pieces in the way they might, but it was an opportunity, and regardless of how it's dressed up, it was an opportunity lost.
Mark, same for you?
I'm looking at it that Newcastle were second best to a side who was stuck at the bottom of the table
with no points.
With no points. And they were struggling all around. So we thought, and then they came and actually out-footballed Newcastle. They were better organised, and
we did improve second half. We did improve second half without a shadow of doubt. But we could have got.
But we certainly did, John. But they were trying to sort of make up for the debacle of what had been the first half. I felt, and they were the whole side was under a sort of pressure that, and yet they hadn't been under that kind of pressure at Spurs, for heaven's sake. Why were they suddenly at home against the bottom of the table? Why were they under this kind of pressure that was just weighing them down all the while? And I looked at it, and there was a back five. The full-backs weren't really getting forward. Why not? You're at home, for heaven's sake. Go and attack them. And it left the midfield very, very short indeed. And I found the whole thing disorganised, and that should not be happening at home. It really shouldn't. And I think the worst thing is that now there's a big break, and that players are going to be disappearing all over the place and what have you. Those players needed to be kept in a group and really worked hard to get an understanding and a tactical awareness which I didn't think was there at all. It was against Spurs. Why isn't it there now? It wasn't against Norwich, and that, to me, that's a mystery. Why was it? Why were they so tactically aware against Tottenham Hotspur, and it's all a shambles against Watford?
A question I put out on Facebook earlier on today to poll. Basically, after 4 league games and a cup exit, have Newcastle United bought well in the transfer window? I think overwhelmingly people are voting no. 26 votes for that, 11 votes for yes. People feel that we have bought well, and an option that only got 3 votes is it's a little bit early in the season, but you can get a bit of a feel for it.
I'd love to know.
Have we bought well?
Well, I'd love to know why the people who are saying yes, we have bought well. What is it that they're seeing from the new faces that's so impressing them?
I mean, for me...
Because I'm not seeing
For me, Willems, I would agree, he's come in, he's done well in the games that he's played. He looks okay. Joe Linton isn't going to get 20 goals this season, but what Joe Linton's bringing to the
By
team
the way,
is certainly...
he's never got 10 in a season, never mind 20.
The kid's got a good first touch.
I can see why.
He holds the ball up well.
He can look good physically, and he can look elegant.
Yeah.
But you want a centre forward to live in the penalty area,
to
bully central defenders. He bullied central defenders. Shearer bullied central defenders. Andy Carroll, when he's fit, which is not too often, bullies central defenders. You get the feeling that Joe can be bullied rather than bullies defenders, and that's why you don't score enough goals. And that worries me. He looked very elegant. He took his goal wonderfully well against Spurs, but he was in oceans of space, and Rose come in to try to block and was too late. And he is going to finish elegantly in those situations, but he doesn't get enough shots off in a game. He needs to be a lot... If you're going to wear the number 9 shirt at Newcastle United, you score more than 10 goals in a season. So far, and I know he's a young man and he might well go into it, and please do go into it, but so far, no indications that he's going to score 10 goals. So, you know, if you're wearing a number 9 at Newcastle and you don't score 10 goals in a season, can you qualify to be a success at the end of that season?
Sure.
When you've been, someone's paid 40 million, it's not your...
Which is a record for Newcastle United.
You can't do anything about it, but he's a £40 million striker.
Yes, unfortunately, he's got that up against his name, and he's got the number 9 shirt up against his name. Yet I can understand fans having an early look at him, see the plus sides, desperately want him to succeed, and he can look pleasing on and easy on the eye. But the bottom line, in number 9, goals.
Mal, you played number 9. What do you think of Joe Linton?
Well, he's totally the opposite to me, because I wanted to just face the opposing goal and wait for the ball to come there. What he wants to do is play the other way. He faces his own goal and he wants to be a target man and what have you. What he hasn't got is somebody who is close at hand and running off him. That Almiron goes over there, and then he's over there, and then he's over there, and he's all over the place. And that he's never really there in support of Joe Linton.
Yeah.
They need to be closer together.
Oh, they need to be closer together with Almiron using his pace, because Joe Linton, he'll hold it up, he'll flick it on. And if Almiron is reading that, whichever one is going to happen from the big centre forward, then he can be making his runs, or he can be holding it short to receive the ball back from him, but use his pace to go beyond Joe Linton, taking the last defender on. And at the moment, I'm seeing him he's going outside left, he's going outside right, he's going back into midfield. And I think if you were to sit the lad down and say, well, what exactly is it that you're doing for the team? But I'm being a nice guy. Because that's what I see him being, a nice guy doing a lot of running for everybody else instead of doing what's necessary, and that is sticking the ball in the net.
Lee Rutter thinks you're spot on about Almiron there, Malcolm. Malcolm Quinn says, do you think we should have spent £40 million on somebody else, somebody more established who would have guaranteed goals as opposed to an inexperienced young striker?
Well, yeah, I mean, yes. The simple thing and the interesting thing that I would like to ask the faceless guy at St James's Park, whoever that is, that Newcastle had followed, in defence of Newcastle, they followed Joe Linton for so long it's untrue. We were told in January that Rafa Benitez could have had him and refused to have him. And that was obviously a minus mark against Rafa in the eyes of Newcastle United. And the minute Rafa wasn't going to be here, Joe Linton was signed so quickly.
But if you look at the situation, Rafa had it absolutely right. He said it's not worth 40 million.
But the point I'm trying to make, Malcolm, is that somebody in Newcastle United that has watched him for 9 months insists he is worth 9. I would like to know who that guy is and what that was based upon. And we can't say after 4 games that he's going to be proved wrong, because it's far too early to judge, and this is a young man, and we've got to wait and see. But he hasn't got a goal-scoring record that suggests that 40 million is the going rate for this guy. 40 million man should score more than 10 goals in a season.
Quite why the owner was willing to offer, X amount of, pounds as well for him to be brought to the club was bizarre as well. Rafa came out and said he was prepared, he was going to offer him £20 million towards the fee, crazy really when you think about it. There's obviously something going on there which we're not privy to.
I mean, all we can think of from the outside is that he's so young. He's just had his 23rd birthday that Ashley has been convinced by whoever the scout was that wanted him that this guy, by the time he's 27, is going to be worth 80 million, and you cash in on him and you've made a huge profit. Whereas with Rondon, he saw it as dead money because there wasn't a sell-on situation with Rondon.
Yes.
But if you think that Joe Linton is worth 40 and Rondon was worth 16 or wasn't worth 16, who would score the most goals and who would play centre forward split at the moment, you would have to go for Rondon.
Rondon short term certainly would have got us
short term, no
question. But I think that's
it is short term.
We're a club that buys players in to sell them on.
By the way, May was saying all this that Rondon's goal scoring record wasn't good enough. What he got for Newcastle last season is the first time he'd scored more than 10. Have we got this barrier like the 4-minute mile used to be? This 10 goals a season barrier.
But the point you've just made, Steve, by the signing of Joe Linton for the money that they paid has blown your theory out of the water, and your theory is almost identical to that of Rafa Benitez. That yes, let's get them in cheaper when they're young. We'll promote them in the side, let them improve vastly, and then we can sell them on by all means. But Joe Linton at 40 million. What's the next valuation on him?
Well,
is
as John says, it could be 80.
Or
it could be or it could be 10.
More like 10.
Yeah.
The way it's going at the moment, because he is nowhere near being a £40 million player at the moment. Why have they spent that huge sum of money when Rafa Benitez we understood that a lot of it was to do with what Rafa was wanting.
Yeah.
Well, what he wanted really was not to spend 40 million on Joe Linton.
Yeah.
And spend some of it on somebody else.
Yes.
I mean, it's true enough that that with both Almiron's been bought for the same reason. A youngish man at 21 million will be able to sell him at 27 or 28 when he's coming into his pump for twice as much. The same theory's applied, whether it's going to work out that way or not. And we must say that, of course, the figure of 40 million and the figure of 21 million, which Ashley wants us to concentrate on, to say, look, aren't we spending big, is with all the add-ons of success. That the guy reaches certain goals and certain number of games and all that. The initial payment is not 40, the initial payment was not 21. So if they don't make it, they'll not have cost that much. But from our point of view, that's not the way we were wanting to go.
No.
Let's be absolutely true. Everybody, Newcastle United fans and us round this table, need Joe Linton and Almiron to be a success.
Yeah.
Because if they are not a success,
shadow of a doubt.
what on earth have we got goals-wise, having allowed 21 goals, or how many to go out the door with Rondon and Perez?
Yeah.
Right, but there is something seriously lacking, and I know that Almiron, he's a youngster, but what he's looking like at the moment is a headless chicken. It needs somebody to get hold of him and to direct him and to talk to him and get the nasty side to come out of him. And
Do you think
at the
he's got a
moment,
nasty side?
you've got you can put one into anybody.
Yeah.
If you really want to, but at the moment, I'm not seeing the coaching. I'm not seeing the talking to. I'm not seeing anything really come out at the moment. I just wonder is Steve and Steve Bruce and all his coaching staff, are they looking at Almiron and who's ever so busy, and that busyness is impressing them.
Yeah.
Because it ain't the right thing.
No.
For one, he does not, in all the busyness that he puts onto a football field, he doesn't get into the right place at the right time. And that is probably one of the most important things for any forward. You've got to be in the right place at the right time. You can't do it all the time, but at least do it a few times.
I often wonder, when I watch him, that a young man coming over into big-time football, having been in an American game, whether he almost wants to be a success too much. Yeah. And he can remind you of the little lad in the schoolyard that used to chase wherever the football was, trying hard to get on the ball and
chase
impress.
After the ball.
Yeah, and impress. And you almost think, is he so keen to want to do it, that he's just running wherever the ball is, and he's picking the ball up so deep so many times. Sometimes when he gets anywhere near our penalty area, he's just about whacked, and the defence is treble deep to look after him. But there we go.
But also there are occasions where he gets into the opposing back four, but I just get the feeling that by the time he gets there, he's a bit too tired to really make it count.
Yeah. Let's talk about the attendance at the weekend, and that for me
was
a huge talking point, because
44,000.
We had boycott Arsenal for the first game, which I partook in, and people were saying, well, 47,000 Newcastle fans aren't voting with their feet. But I think what we got on Saturday was a true reflection of how many people have literally just said enough is enough and walked away.
It was massive, because you're 8,000 down on the 52,000 capacity, which Newcastle were getting quite regularly last season, etc. We got more than 44,000 as an average when we were playing in the Championship than we had at this game. And this, you've got to remember, this match came along on the back of a great victory at Spurs, which might have got one or two people to sort of say, I've got to go to see if this has started a renaissance.
On the back of what wasn't that bad a performance against Leicester in the Cup, at home.
But you know, I mean,
and heavens above, that was a shocking crowd as well.
But yes, but you know that was going to be for a League Cup tie with the side that he put out.
I understand that, but the performance
it was okay. It was good, but it wasn't great.
No, it wasn't great, but it's
great.
enough to drag people back again.
But it wasn't. It wasn't.
Well, that's right. That's right.
I mean, I think it's hugely significant, and I think because we all know how difficult it is for Geordies not to go and support the team.
Yeah.
It's in your blood. It's in your DNA that's what you do. You support Newcastle, come hell or high water. But they've got so sick of the current regime that regardless, they're saying, no, I will not go back until things change significantly.
Yeah.
And I noticed Steve Bruce, when asked afterwards about the attendance of 44,000, the lowest for X number of years in the Premier League, and he said, well, you know, we'll put that right with a few wins.
Yeah.
I'm not certain you will, you know. No. I'm not certain you will, because you've got the start of that against Spurs and nobody come along. I don't think that, you know, back-to-back wins or 3 wins on the trot is going to have 52,000 there the next week. I don't think it will.
But what a crazy thing to say when the game that you expect to seriously win is against the bottom of the table side. Yeah. And they couldn't beat them. Yeah. Well, where are all these other wins going to come from?
Oh, but that's the next point.
You know,
yes,
if you're going to manage a club, for heaven's sake, have your feet on the ground and stay sensible. And I don't think a comment like that has any sense to it whatsoever.
I said last week he needs to concentrate on just managing the football team and keep away from politics, keep away from criticising the supporters.
Good advice.
And stop, you know, just stop that. You know, he's got a couple of weeks off now to reflect on his first, 6 to 8 weeks in management of Newcastle United. He realises what a crackpot club it can be at times, surely. And he just needs to reflect on what he's done right and what he's done wrong, not just on the pitch, but off it, because I think he's going to affect his own issues with that.
Yeah.
Results will affect him, because if he, we'll come on to it later, but the game that he's got coming up is not an easy one. But if results start going on the downward spiral again, he's going to be back to square one.
Sure, and the game has become very much a stats game these days. That everybody's working on stats. Well, here's a few stats, Steve. Yeah. I didn't see a forward have a shot that was on target against Watford, bottom of the table. Mm-hmm. And I find that frightening.
Yeah, because the goal was a centre-half, and the best shot that was tipped over was Hayden, the midfielder, when the keeper made a good save.
Yeah, yes. And so Newcastle are seriously lacking up there. And we've talked about Amir and running, and we've talked about Joe Linton. But when it actually comes down to it, that it's goals that count. Yeah. And the nearest thing to goals is players missing them. If they don't miss them, then they're going to score them. Mm. And at the moment, we're lacking both.
Yeah, exactly.
In the forwards.
100%. Let's talk about Paul Dummett. He's come from, zero to hero, I think, with a lot of people. I mean, there was a lot of criticism of Paul Dummett a few years ago. He was a scapegoat of the supporters. A lot of people, weren't giving him the time of day. Now, I would say he's probably one of the first names on the team sheet when he's fit. Would you agree, John?
I think I would. Malcolm has often said many times in public, both in his columns with my newspaper and on air, that he's the nearest thing he's seen to Frank Clark, who played in the Newcastle side with Malcolm. That went
who was
to
a
Wembley
brilliant defender
twice and was a wonderful defender. This guy is exactly the same.
Some comparison, Mal.
And like Frank, he's had a win over the Newcastle United supporters, because Frank Clark was not liked by Newcastle supporters on the old popular side.
No, you are supporters. Would you put Frank Clark in the side? And they'll probably say no. Yep. Ask the players who played with him, would you have... Well, yes, first on the team sheet.
Yep. And I think Paul Dummett has done that. I mean, his future was always... I remember when he was on loan up in Scotland, and Tommy Craig telling me that, this guy just loves to defend, loves to defend. And saying that he would be a centre-half, a left-sided centre-half. He was an out-and-out left-back in those days, as we know. I'm not certain in the modern game, Steve, that he is a left-back, because you've got to attack, you've almost got to be a winger who can tackle, and he's not a winger in terms of crossing the ball. He's much more left-sided, tucked-in central defender.
Yes.
The amazing thing is, and he looks the top man around at the moment, along with Shaw. Yeah. But when you think of the competition Newcastle have in this central defender's role, and he's got to hold off, and you think there's Fernandes there who comes in and does a terrific job when he does come in. Even Kieran Clark comes in and scores goals on set pieces. And of course Lejeune's to come back in. So there's an awful lot of players there. But Dummett is a Geordie who had a win over Geordies and has done so. And I think the Newcastle supporters as well are quite pleased with the fact that he's said about an international career with Wales. I've got hamstring problems, as David Craig had in your time.
Yes,
They can reoccur. And I can do with the fortnight off every now and again, which is the international week. If I go away and play for Wales and I'm non-stop, the hamstrings will go. And he has put his club career first with Newcastle United, and that is a magnificent thing from Newcastle's point of view. And by the way, always adored by managers. Rafa Benitez thought he was terrific. Steve Bruce is very quickly thought he's terrific. He is appreciated, as Frank Clark was, by managers before supporters. But I think supporters are now beginning to see. And I mean, was he the standout man at Tottenham, by the way? I mean, he got his head on everything.
Yes, that's right. But playing in the middle, it doesn't need him then to do the overlap.
That's what I'm saying. That's why
that's his weakness.
Absolutely.
Once he crosses the halfway line, and of course it was exactly the same with Clarkey as well. And so, with a player like Dummett, leave him where he's most comfortable, because that's when he's so effective.
The problem's going to be though when Lejeune comes
when
back.
The others
when Lejeune comes, maybe he can hold off Fernandes and Kieran Clark. But when Lejeune is fit and up to match speed again, is it him or is it Dummett? That's when we're going to have a situation.
But I always think though, in football, wait until the problem arises.
Oh sure, and be pleased at the moment because something else.
Because it's all it's also short term in football, and who knows that somebody else will be injured and what have you, and it all works out then.
Malcolm's finally joined Twitter. Well, he joined 2017. And
silly boy. He's never
tweeted until today. So 2 years on since he joined. So he's on there.
Tweeter.
No, I had to learn to spell.
Oh, right.
Yeah, that was my problem.
So if you follow Malcolm on Twitter, if you're on Twitter, he's on there now, and it's 9supermac. Very easy, at 9supermac. So give him
made you pick that on?
Give him a follow. But it takes us nicely into the biggest argument in football today, which is, of course, Alan Shearer and Michael Owen. Two former strikers of this parish. One who was an absolute legend, and another one was an absolute waste of time. Exactly, legend. So, I mean, what did you make of that? You both had time to digest what's been said in this new biography by Michael Owen. Mal, I'll start with you. What's your views on the argument and on what Michael Owen said?
Firstly, I find it rather sad. You know, two greats of the game, two England greats, and who have both played for Newcastle United, to be having such a spat in public. And what's it for? Just to sell a book?
In Michael Owen's case.
Yeah, in Michael Owen's case, and I'm not sure that he needs the money from it with all that he earned whilst playing. Yeah. And I really do feel that just to get involved, I think they're all letting themselves down in some way. Is there good publicity for the book? I'm not so sure, because I can't see that book selling in the northeast. That's for sure.
Definitely not. It might sell in Sunderland.
I mean, to be truthful, and I've got to be truthful over this. I have no time for Michael Owen as a Newcastle United player.
Yep.
Forget Liverpool and England.
Understand.
As a Newcastle United player, no time for him whatsoever. And if you're going to compare him, who I believe let the club down, with Alan Shearer, the greatest goal scorer in Newcastle United's history, let's all go home now because there isn't a contest. Shearer is 3 times the player to Newcastle United fans that Michael Owen has ever been or ever would wish to be. And from that point of view, with my fan hat on, I haven't got much time for Michael Owen's argument. I thought he didn't play enough for us. I thought he didn't do enough for us. I didn't think he was passionate about Newcastle United. He was cold about Newcastle United. There was no man more passionate about Newcastle United than Alan Shearer. And Owen wasn't in his pomp here. He lost the yard of pace, which is why, with all his injuries, which is why Real Madrid got rid, and why Freddie Sheps shouldn't have bought him, bless him. He bought him, he thought he was buying the original man that played at Liverpool, not the man that was now. Like you get with a few players after injuries, Torres at Liverpool. But if you talk to Liverpool fans, when he was in his pomp at Liverpool in his teens and later years, Liverpool fans don't have an awful lot of affection for Michael Owen when he was a top player. They don't hold him in the affection they hold Robbie Fowler, etc. Because
that's very true.
He was a very cold type person. And football is about passion. Football, if you don't have a passion for it as a fan, don't bother going. You'll be maybe Mike Ashley might reflect on that. And for me, Shearer has passion. Owen doesn't have passion. Shearer's record in Newcastle United doesn't stand up. It's the best. He's the goal scoring best. And Owen's record in Newcastle doesn't stand up. No argument from my point of view. Don't want to discuss. I'm with Shearer. I'm certainly not with Michael Owen.
Should you wash your dirty linen in public like that, Mal? I mean, you know, the book's one thing. People can have a say in a book, and it happens. You've written books. John's written books. I've written books. We all know footballers who've written books. Something's should be left in the dressing room sometimes, and is it right then to carry it onto Twitter like they have?
No, I don't think so. No, and the way it's been going on Twitter, and who's going to buy the book anyway? Because
who needs to, you know.
That's right. All the content has come out on Twitter and in other. Public areas.
Alan haven't been slaughtered, mind, and it's all over the place that he is slaughtered.
He's entitled.
He's bound to come back and defend himself. Well, he's bound to. That's called human nature. It's called human nature. He was bound to do that, because if you don't, you're sort of admitting in your silence that what you're being accused of is true.
I think that he could defend himself in 3 words.
Yeah, well, they can't be said on television. Right. At least 2 of them can't.
Moving on to the Liverpool game, which is, of course, after the international break, and it's at Anfield. Champions elect, if you believe what a lot of the people are suggesting this year, that it's going to be Liverpool's year. It's a tough game for Newcastle to go into, isn't it? But we're fearing the worst going into the Spurs game, so let's just talk about it.
May I say, though, that Liverpool are a tad better than Spurs. Spurs had laboured, with hindsight, Spurs had laboured to get Aston Villa out the way on the first day at home. Did so in the last 10 minutes or something with a couple of Kane goals. They got a wonderful draw at Man City, but was proved with Varane, etc., the winning goal by Zizou ought to have been a winning goal that was choked off. And, you know, they got the result there. A bit of good fortune, but good for them. They scored 2 away at Man City, etc. And then they got duffed by us, and then they split a 2-goal winning margin against Arsenal. They aren't anywhere near Liverpool. They are a million miles away in ability and consistency of Liverpool. If you look at Liverpool, Steve, Liverpool last year lost 1 Premier League game. 1 Premier League game the whole of last season. They were champions of Europe last season. They are currently on a record run of 13 consecutive Premier League wins, which they got the 13th in the last match. They've got the centre half who was Europe's Footballer of the Year, Van Dijk, and they've got a front three that are so special it's untrue. Now, I think that's a bit of a game to play against that for an hour and a half and get a draw or get a victory. It's tough, but that is another reason why we needed the result against Watford. And will we get it? If you look at in my opinion, if you look at what Newcastle's done in the 4 games until now, and you say, 4 points out of 4 games, not bad, better than last season, they started the Rafa, etc. Correct. But if you take out the wonderful result at Spurs, which was absolutely sensational, and we're thrilled to bits about it, the other 3 matches worry us. We lost 1-0 against a very average Arsenal side. We got blown away at Norwich, and we couldn't beat the team, Watford, bottom of the league, with no points whatsoever. So the other 3 league games outside of Spurs haven't looked great. And for me, I'm not thinking about Liverpool because I'm expecting to get beat there. I'm thinking Brighton at home the following week. That is the one where we've got to win. We've got to win in the way that we had to win at Norwich, and we had to win against Watford. We can't blow yet.
John, don't you worry. The match against Liverpool will bring the very best out of Steve Bruce and all his coaches. Don't you worry.
There's a brave statement from Malcolm MacDonald. I bet you get some abuse on Twitter.
I think I saw a twinkle in the eye and there was a little bit of sarcasm there.
We're expecting a Joe Linton hat-trick and getting his teeth knocked out.
And Almiron 4.
Couple of quick ones from Twitter. People welcoming you to Twitter, Malcolm, which is great.
That's lovely. Thank you all.
Saying you're a legend. One question from Real Andrew Young. He says, do you regret leaving Newcastle as a player? Briefly?
Not at the time, no. Purely and simply because the situation had been made so awful there by the manager, Gordon Lee. And what he did to Terry Hibbett, I just couldn't feel comfortable staying at St James Park. And it was a shame. It really was. It was sad that it had come to that, where I just felt I had to leave. I had to get out.
Get More, Want More, UK on Twitter as well. He has basically said, if you were the manager of Newcastle, what positions would you strengthen? Which players would you bring in?
There's a programme in itself.
Yeah, it is.
I would really start to pull the whole squad apart. You know, what I saw against Watford, I would, if I were manager and that was my first game, I would walk into the dressing room and I would say, right, hands up, anybody who has played well enough today to be in next week's side. And if I had seen more than 2 hands go up, I would have said, well, you're all kidding yourselves. So, right, let's get down to business. Each to their own, you know. But I think that's a Newcastle side that is in grave danger. And the danger has got graver by what happened and the result of the last match, the Watford game.
I agree 100%. Okay, we're going to come to the end of the programme now. Congratulations to Gary James, who subscribed to our channel on YouTube. You've won the Rafa Benitez signed programme against Chelsea from last season. We'll get that in the post to you. We will have more competitions over the next few weeks for you to win something at home, as long as you subscribe to our YouTube page, which is NUFC Matters. Give us a follow on Facebook and on Twitter, which is at NUFC Toon Talk. I think next week it might be an idea we'll get you two guys in and maybe have a chat about your Newcastle memories, because obviously we've got International Week. It would be nice to maybe have a chat with you, John, about games you've covered and players you've met, and with you, Malcolm, a little bit about your career. Probably talk about the Terry Hibbett story, for instance. It would be really interesting to hear a little bit more about that. So if you want to get your questions in for John and for Malcolm, that would be great. Send them to me on Facebook and Twitter as well. Get your questions in for next week. We're going to play out with a local band from Teesside called the Wayne Stones this week. Thanks very much for sending in your video. And if you've got a band and you want them to feature on NUFC Matters, send the videos over to us and we will play them on our show. The full show will of course be on our YouTube channel. We will be back next week with Malcolm and Gibbo. Good night from me.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.